Welcome back to the broadcast. The big story tonight is that ODM leader Raila Odinga has thrown a spanner in the works in the debate about the changing the system of governance, telling the Devolution conference in the county of Kakamega earlier today that there is big need for the introduction of a third tier of government, the regional governments. My panel tonight have with me Nandi Senator Samson Cherargei, elections expert Marcus Agenga, lawyer Dr. Alutalala Muhwana, and Executive Director Pamoja Trust, Dr. Steve Ouma. Let me come to you, Bwana Senator, for your final thoughts on this discussion. Dr. Steve Ouma in Kakamega has said that what Raila Odinga is proposing has nothing to do with politics. It is indeed what the founding fathers of the nation wanted back in 1963. Do you agree?
I don't agree because we have moved beyond that idea. Now we have devolution or devolved form of governance, which is very unique in Africa and in the world. And I think I want to agree with most of the panelists that they have insisted, let us do the audit, let us agree that there are challenges that face this form of governance. Then from there, we can take stock. I agree where I sit as the Chair of Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights in Senate, is that this constitution, occasionally, as the election expert has said there, need to be reviewed. This is a process that is ongoing, and there is an idea even of, we are looking at the proposal of giving the legislative approach to economic blocks that we are having across various counties that have come, the North Rift, the Lake region, the coastal region, among other regions that have come, even the Mount Kenya region have come up under our economic block. Those are some of the issues we are trying to give impetus to form of devolution, where we are now giving legislative approach towards economic blocks. I want to agree that the conversation on the form of governance, and I want to insist what I said, that there is no need to add another tier of government at this point in time when we have not done even both the audit of the current form of devolved form of governance as we have it. I want to say, these proposals we'll look at it when we cross there, but I want to insist, let us look, there are so many things that this devolution has worked. Some villages in this region who did not even have a cesarean section in some parts of northeastern counties, now they can do it. There are areas where we didn't have road network, now the devolution have evolved. We have opportunities now are coming in form of, it is even easy for the national government and the county government, although they are distinct, they need not to compete with each other but to complement. That is the interrelationship we should be looking at, the intergovernmental relationship we should be working on to ensure that both the national and county governments work. But my concern, as I had said earlier, that the main challenges we are facing are three, maybe corruption, issues of wrong priorities, and then the final one is where we're having more devolved functions going to the devolved units, but they are not being followed with costing, maybe finances with the functions that have already been devolved. So I think all these factors, when you look at them, will ensure that if we try and bring down these challenges that are facing devolution is the future of this country. Devolution is where we are going ahead to ensure that it works for the betterment, but not work for a few individuals. And I think finally, Ben, I want to say, for us in Senate, we are going to use this second generation of Senate, we are going to defend the county's interests vigorously as much as possible, but in the same manner, we will always defend the misuse and abuse of the resources at the county level so that we don't have devolution becoming an enemy of development, but bring development to the lowest level that is possible. But I want to finish by saying, if you look at this conversation, a few weeks ago, we were having the NASA leaders and NASA affiliated members of parliament. They started this conversation that now that we have the golden handshake, we should be looking at the form of executive governance, where by 2022 we should have a prime minister, an executive prime minister, and maybe a ceremonial president. From where I sit, I want to insist that this conversation of changing the form of governance is being hidden through the conversation of changing of the executive, where we want to broaden the table of executive to create more opportunities for many people. And I think this is a more of political agenda which is being set in the interest. I know you had the Okoa Kenya, you remember the Okoa Kenya referendum, where we had issues of pesa mashinani, but the loudest thing at that point in time was to reform the executive. And I think going forward, these are it will come out in the coming few days, but for us, we should be discussing the referendum on how to increase job opportunities for young people, how to improve the absorption rate of development at the grassroots level of the counties, how to eradicate corruption, and to ensure the devolved form of governance works in a more efficient and effective way.
All right. Thank you, Bwana Senator. Always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your thoughts on this issue tonight. That is Samson Cherargei, Senator Nandi County, joining us live from Kisumu. Let me come to you, Dr. Steve Ouma. All of your fellow panelists seem to think that devolution, as is currently constituted in Chapter 11 of the Kenyan Constitution, is working. What is your take on that? And also, a second question for you. There has pundits, some analysts are saying that there has been corruption, wanton corruption in the counties, something that needs to be reined in, wastage in the counties as well, something that needs to be dealt with. And then there's the issue of a ballooned wage bill that came with devolution. Is there a need for yet another tier of government?
Thank you very much. Let me start with your last question on the expenses and the cost of devolution. You know, about 2 years ago, there was a movement by some politicians that suggested that devolution was too expensive and therefore it ought to have been abolished. And there was an audit that was done actually by a parliamentary committee headed by Mutava Musimi. And that committee concluded that although the cost of implementing devolution was fairly high, but that expense in terms of taxpayers' money was worth it. If you look at the cost-benefit analysis, the amount spent was worth it, and therefore they said, look, let us not even contemplate doing away with the structure of devolution. So that is the first answer I want to give to the question of cost. Then is the second question of corruption. In fact, the Prime Minister himself today gave a very interesting detail of how corruption has been entrenched. And we have said this many, many times as civil society, that a lot of leaders in the local level have established small companies, and these companies are getting tenders irregularly. There's too much kickback required, and there are a series of cartels that have been established. And that is a governance question that is making devolution very, very expensive, because there's a lot of corruption, not only devolved corruption, but some new forms of corruption formulated and localized. And that must be dealt with, because that is indeed toxicating devolution unnecessarily. But there is a third question you've asked about functions, and it's something that also came up today. One of the things we've discussed in details in the conference here in Kakamega is the issue of the Big Four agenda suggested by His Excellency the President. And I, in particular, I am a facilitator of a task group within this conference that is looking at the question of infrastructure, housing, and energy subgroup. And we have argued on the question of housing, for example. You know, housing is a devolved function. So while it is very, very good and very important that the national government should intervene in housing, they must have a memorandum of understanding with the counties, so that indeed those who will deliver houses are the county governments. And today, and between today and yesterday, the Department of Housing has signed already MOUs with 5 county governments to deliver on that housing agenda. So indeed, the question that we need to push to make devolution work is to make sure that we remain diligent to the subdivision of roles between county government and the national government as well.
All right, Dr. Mukhwana, I want you to respond to some of the things, some of the points that Dr. Ria is raising.
Thank you, Ben. Dr. is right in as far as he says that corruption has contributed to the ills, to the maladies that afflict devolution, and therefore devolution has become expensive. And that actually supports my earlier assertion that the claim as to the non-viability of the 47 counties cannot therefore be well-founded if some of the reasons that are leading to that conclusion are reasons that are manufactured by the very leaders who are in the politics of this country. Secondly, the issue of the restructuring of the government, in my view, is not a bad idea on the face of it, prima facie. However, I am a firm believer in the auditing of a current status before you recommend changes. And in my view, there are one or two quick things that I want to mention that must be looked at before we talk about restructuring. Number one, the centralists who in 1963 opposed Majimbo, they still live today. They have clung on important functions of devolution and refused to leave them so that devolution can operate optimally. For instance, the issue of health is a big fight. We know that equipments have been loaded on the county governments. Some county governments have been able to absorb them. Some other county governments are already paying the lease rentals, yet they do not even have the staff, the qualifications that can handle them optimally. Two, the issue of roads. We know that Kura, for example, is still handling roads in areas where they ought not to be handling. Ben, we must first begin by being honest that devolution has been frustrated. And if only His Excellency, the former Prime Minister, would stick to his agenda prior to the handshake, in my view, it was very, very satisfactory if all those issues be handled. If we engage in a suggestion to restructure the government, my fear is this, that the 2022 politics of succession will set in. And you can hear Honorable Cherargei from there he's saying. So even if this suggestion is good, it is going to be opposed from the onset because it portends to shake off the ambitions of the Deputy President who has vowed that 2022 is his. So in my view, we must remain true to the course of devolution.
All right.
By assessing it in honesty without bringing in the politics of 2022.
Thank you,
and
Dr.
without wanting to create space for ourselves in the field of politics.
Thank you, Dr. Marcus, let me get your final thought on this. We are already seeing that Raila Odinga is ruffling feathers with that a proposal, the Nandi senator saying that he does not, and he'll make sure that the Senate does not support this. Do you see this getting any political goodwill from both sides of the political divide, or what is your prediction politically, at the back of that handshake?
I think chances of it being frustrated are very high, as you have seen already from the senator, that we have removed the debate from a purely governance point of view and made it a political conversation. Now, when you remove serious discussions like this one from interrogation of utility and viability and make it a political discussion, then we lose the point. Now, if it takes a political angle, then chances of its frustrations are very eminent. And I can tell you, Ben, we will not be able to see the end of this discussion moving forward. But like I've said, that there is need as a country to have honest conversation, to interrogate if structures work for us. And if you allow me to say this, as we've even finished this discussion, there are two paradigms in this conversation that the Prime Minister has alluded to. One, there is the question of law. Do we need to change our legal infrastructure to accommodate and to enhance viability and performance of our counties? That's number one. The other more fundamental question is the holders of these offices, and also in relationship to the Chapter 6 of our Constitution. What kind of leadership do we have in our country? Are they leaders that promote the interests of our country? Do they understand what devolution speaks to? Do they want to work for it, or do they want the systems to work for them?
Right, indeed, very pertinent question. Thank you, gentlemen, for your perspectives on this very A big developing story for us. Marcus Agenga, elections expert, lawyer Dr. Alutalala Mukhwana, and Executive Director of Pamoja Trust, Dr. Steve Ouma, joining us live from the county of Kakamega, where the devolution conference is currently ongoing. Very quickly, Otieno Odhiambo says, if we cannot manage the counties, what assurances will propel the other level of government? Onesmus, that's institutionalizing tribalism into our blood. And then Onesmus says, that's utter nonsense. We don't have to keep changing how we are governed every minute. The big story, that proposal by Raila Odinga to introduce a third tier of government. Thank you for joining us on The Big Story tonight. I'm Ben Kitili. Good night from me. Up next is KTN Prime with Linda Ogutu.
KTN